Listen to this different translation of what Job then answers back to God. You know you can do anything. Nothing can stop you. You ask, who is this ignorant meddler? Well, I said more than I did. Wonders quite beyond me. You listen and I'll talk, you say. I'll question and you'll tell me. Word of you has reached my ears. But now that my eyes have seen you, I shudder with sorrow for mortal clay. Job demanded that God defend God's actions. And in response, what God did was thunder forth from the whirlwind, kind of like a bullet. Job had never denied the power of God. He had only called upon the justice of God. But God never speaks about justice. And how is it that Job has responded? Traditionally, we're told that Job repents of his questions that he has raised and the demands that he has made. And because he submits, that God then blesses him. I find this traditional concept of God to be too much like the view of Job's friends which God has repudiated. John Calvin, for instance, believed that all success is blessing from God and that all calamity and adversity are a curse. And there is no place left in human affairs for fortune and chance. I believe this view is rejected throughout the book of Job. The great Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel wrote, I was offended by Job's surrender to the text. Job's resignation as a man was an insult to man. He should have continued to protest, to refuse the handouts. Well, you probably won't be surprised to know that more recent scholars have studied this text carefully and they offer a different reading. I rely upon that of Jack Miles in his best-selling Pulitzer Prize-winning book, God Biography, where we are traditionally told that Job submits. Jack Miles says what really happens is that when Job says, oh, I have heard you, now I'm not going to talk anymore, is really saying, I have asked you to enter into conversation with me, and all you have done is bully me back. I'm not going to keep on talking to you. And that with irony when he says, I have heard of you, but now I have seen you. You are to understand that he had heard good things, and now that he has seen, he's not so sure. Well, then you might wonder, how does God respond to that? Well, we know from the story that God gives Job back everything and more. Is this an acknowledgement of God's guilt? Could it be that in this moment God has learned something about human beings? Could it be that God will now relate differently to them? I think that the final lesson of the book of Job is that God also grows because of God's relationships with God's people. Which is why on Reformation Sunday, I think we can celebrate not the theological formulations of the past, but what we celebrate is the very spirit of reformation, of growth, of renewal, of change. I celebrate the Christian tradition always listening for that still speaking voice of God. I don't like Calvin's or many traditional explanations for evil and suffering. In fact, I find those sorts of views continue the abuse and the pain. But there's another aspect of Calvin's thinking that I do like. He believed that God's power worked on the side of justice and righteousness, and that if we would only open our eyes, we would be overwhelmed by the immense weight of glory, seeing the beautiful work of God that permeates the creation. Sounding something like the liberation theologian who wrote, for instance, neither his power nor his wisdom is shrouded in darkness. His power is strikingly displayed though the rage of the wicked, to all appearance irresistible, is crushed in a single moment. their arrogance subdued, their strongest bulwarks overthrown, their armor dashed to pieces, their strength broken, their schemes defeated without an effort, and the audacity which set itself above the heavens is precipitated to the lowest depths of the earth. And on the other hand, the poor are raised up out of the dust, the needy lifted out of the dunghill, the oppressed and the afflicted are rescued in extremity, and the despairing animated with hope. The unarmed defeat the armed, the few, the many, the weak, the strong. So sure, we experience evil and suffering and oppression. But we also experience these sparks of beauty. There are those moments and those lives which give witness to the graying of the universe. Whether it's Mother Teresa picking up the body of a dead man and carrying him to a dying man and carrying him to the hospital and demanding his treatment, or it's the courage of civil rights marchers on this Edmund Pettus Bridge, or it's the Berlin Wall collapsing under the weight of man's hunger for democracy, or Nelson Mandela being elected the president of a free South Africa. I think the question that is posed to us is, do we have a choice of what kind of God we believe in? And if so, I believe in this one. Not the abuser, not the one who inflicts pain, but the one who stands with us and frees us and liberates us.